Thank you very much. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sure you may have seen me on TV because I used to be a weatherman. In fact, 90% of the time, I engage with the corporate sector talking about how to respond to the climate change risk. And we know that the tech sector is at the forefront of climate risk pressure. A few years ago, we set up a Taiwan climate partnership. A number of SITCOM members would like to join us at the partnership, but the chair of that partnership decided to stick to the tech sector first. So here again is a brief list of the services provided by my company. You can see there's a wide range of clients we serve, but I'll skip that one. As Vice Chair Cho just mentioned that there are many different ways to estimate or calculate climate risk. I will touch upon that at the end of my presentation, and you will be able to see what climate opportunities lie ahead for all of you. I know that you are here to help your clients make money. At the same time, you also want to contribute to carbon reductions. I think that's what has brought us here. So here's the outline of my presentation. First, we know that on April 19th, we heard some great news released by the government. We have been calling upon the government to set up market mechanism to promote responses to climate change risk. And President Tsai on that day announced that we would set up a carbon exchange platform. As a result, more companies benefited from that announcement because investors believe that they make good investment since they provide potential carbon sinks. For example, paper company, forestry company. So there's a big group of new rich benefiting from the latest policy announcement. So 2 days ago, finally, the government has released more details on the to-be-established carbon trading platform. So basically, you can see that this carbon trading exchange is going to issue 100 million shares. And I also wonder how this exchange is going to work. Are we going to purchase green credits from abroad? There are two types of carbon pricing, voluntary and mandatory. Voluntary carbon pricing, of course, as you can see, there can be internal carbon pricing or offsets, but on mandatory side, there can be cap and trade or carbon tax or carbon fees. For example, in terms of cap and trade, Taiwan government may set a total emission cap. Then different companies can only get certain amount of allowed or allocated emission quota. In the past decades, we have accumulated 40 million tons of carbon reductions thanks to the voluntary reduction programs. Right now, globally, each ton of carbon can be sold at about $3 to $4. But in the EU, the price is high as $300. And our EPA has also said that the carbon fees must be earmarked for specific purposes. But basically, the government will impose such carbon fees upon companies, and local governments will set up different funds to use the fees collected to reduce carbon emissions. Because the competent authority for the to be set up carbon trading platform or exchange will be the EPA, and the EPA has so far released voluntary reduction trading. I think the EPA may not be able to live up to the market's expectation of the trading platform, given the policies they have released so far. And the government also provides preferential rates for voluntary reduction plans. Some tech companies have been purchasing carbon credits, but they are not in a rush to do that because most of them are concerned about procuring green electricity for now. So most of these companies in the tech sector are focused on promoting voluntary reduction plans. So it seems that our future carbon exchange will focus on voluntary reduction trade plans.
From the negotiation of climate change is not actually covered. This is our new system. This is actually aligned with the international practice. For example, you change from a traditional motorcycle to a electronic motorcycle vehicle. There is a subsidy and there is a carbon trading mechanism built in. The price of your motorcycle covers your carbon price and also the emission tax. So these are required by law. In the future, if you change your car, you buy a Tesla, government will give you $16,000 of subsidy. It's a small number, but it's part of the government's effort in carbon reduction. What about international trade? This is a big issue. Carbon pricing. In our alliance, Delta has the highest pricing. It's $300 per ton of carbon. And they have a subsidiary company in Thailand because Thailand is very active in green energy. Therefore, this subsidiary of Delta is now has the most expensive stock in the Thai exchange. And this subsidiary of Delta in Thailand has become one of the most important stock in the Thai exchange, the Bangkok exchange. And Paris Accord, they are announcing new regulations. SB 50A in Bonn is in process in these 2 days. There are new regulations coming out. In the future, they will utilize tools of a blockchain and Web 3.0 to reduce the possibility of double counting and greenwashing. United Nations is working on this. So carbon trading is very important, but everybody has a different set of rules. So we have to align this. This is a Hong Kong carbon exchange. Now they don't have a lot of transactions going on, but there is an institution there already. There's a new carbon marketplace in Hong Kong. In the future, the total number may exceed 200 million. Currently, it's 67.3 billion. What about carbon pricing in the future? We don't know the price for Taiwan, somewhere between 50 to 80. I don't know. Maybe 100 to 300 NT dollars. Singapore is is $5 per ton round. Next year, it's going to be 25. It's going all the way up. For example, therefore, for big companies, TSMC emission is about 10 million tons. Hospitals, they also emit a lot of carbon. So they have to pay a lot of carbon tax there. The Formosa Plastic Group, the entire group emit about 2 million. The NTU Hospital emit about 30,000 tons. So in the future, the big companies will have to pay up to, each big company will pay up to 12 million NT dollars for carbon tax. If this is the Singapore's policy, in Taiwan, if we use the same policy, big companies will have to pay about 12 million NT dollars per year for carbon emission. This will also impact households. This is the Singapore policy. Singapore has a CIS, MEGX, 2 trading facilities already. There are 70 different carbon pricing, most of them EDS. Some are combination of EDS and carbon tax. So it's getting more and more popular. Taiwan is moving very fast, going along with many other countries. But this is not a commonly understood policy in Taiwan. Blue carbon, Winbond Electronics is buying blue carbon from Pakistan. Very expensive. This is the first carbon trading case in Taiwan. Winbond Electronics bought blue carbon from Pakistan. This is very important. It's $20 per ton. This is China Petroleum. They also purchase carbon trading rights. We don't even know where they bought these trading rights from. Are they dealing with illegal brokers, or are they dealing with credible counterparts? We don't really know. People are thinking making money off the carbon trading rights. I don't think if this is a good idea. We don't even know if companies are eligible to engage in such transactions. Another thing is carbon financing. In COP27, Citibank, I went to 10 COP meetings. Maybe this year, at the end of the year, in December 1st, for 2 weeks, COP28 will be held in Dubai. Last year, in COP27, Citibank published a report, Climate Finance. By 2050, it is estimated to require 125 trillion. This is about 1/10 of our government budget. 6 times our government budget, sorry. This is a huge amount of money. The second issue is food security. Also, we have many threats as well. I have spoke to experts in the financial industry. It is estimated that it's $40 trillion of size by 2050. It's going to be 53 trillion to be impacted, to be included under the title of ESG. 1/3 of the entire market is about ESG. There are 2 reports. This is from MSCI report. ESG investment. In ESG report, many reports talked about the better the health of the investor, the better the performance. This is also the same for companies. As here, for good ESG companies, annual performance is up 12% outperformance. Taiwan Stock Exchange is one of the most profitable market, 14 to 16% of return. Why Taiwan is outperforming global market? Why is that? Why? This is a very important information for you to share with you. This is ESG asset. Half of them is TSMC related. I'm sorry, half of the top 10 constituency of ESG products is TSMC. TSMC is actually doing very good. Number 2, MediaTek. Number 3, Delta. And also financial holdings as well. Internationally, it's more diversified. Number 1, Microsoft. About 7% of the index. NVIDIA, Alphabet, TSMC is also there, about 1.3%. But TSMC is the majority of the index in Taiwan. I'm not sure if this is good or bad to have such a concentration of the constituency. Maybe Chairman Liu can issue a press conference telling everybody Taiwan's performance is very good. I once heard something from a NGO saying one of these outperforming Taiwan ESG companies are actually investing in many non-ESG financial investment targets. Well, or these companies are doing not very evenly in terms of ESG and E and S and G. Maybe their E part is not doing very well, but their G part is doing very well. Therefore, in combination, they outperform. And EU taxonomy of environmental objectives. FSC is actually following the EU patent. For example, nuclear power. Is nuclear power sustainable? It's a big topic here in Taiwan. Last week, I met the high management of Taipower, our electronic company. One of the high-ranking officials talked about, they raised this issue. Is nuclear power plant sustainable? The other, a person said, EU taxonomy only includes 3.5 generation nuclear power plant or small power plant as sustainable energy resources. Therefore, even within our power company, there are different opinions. So at least, but anyway, we have a standard to follow, guidelines to follow. In the future, funds in ESG funds in Taiwan will have guidelines to follow. And then greenwashing. Carbon reduction is a costly action. While many companies would actually circumvent the large expense by putting resources in public relations. For example, they can hold activities, for example, to clean up the beach or tree planting, just to show everybody we're doing something. And this is a very common activity happen in the private sector. Governments are also doing the same thing. Many countries announce a lot of projects, but actually there was no action. This is a former minister, for example, the former minister of Canada and other dignitaries established an anti-greenwashing committee. 2 years ago, I went to Glasgow to participate in their meeting. This is Glasgow, as you know, it's in Scotland. It's a very beautiful place. I went to Scotland for whiskey, actually. And I found that whiskey in UK is about 20% more expensive than Taiwan because the high tax. I gave up. I went to the COP meeting, and they announced, the whiskey companies announced by 2040 they will reach the target of net zero. So therefore, I can say whiskey, the world's cheapest whiskey, can only be found in Taiwan. I went to the meeting and I learned a lot. Michael Bloomberg, Mark Carney, the co-chair, they organized this Net Zero Alliance.
So we know that people in the financial sector would like to make money while contributing to sustainability. I'm sure if I tell you, forget about making money, just focus on carbon reduction, you will say no. So 2 years ago, 450 financial institutions were gathered together to forge this alliance. It seems that the governments do not have enough money to support net zero programs. That is why 70% of the investment needed will have to come from the private sector. Here you can see why do we need such an alliance. IEA has come up with this chart. You can see from transport, buildings, industries, energy sectors, all sectors have to chip in. A lot of investments are needed to make sure that different sectors can transition itself toward the low carbon and net zero future. This one comes from our National Development Council. And I actually asked staff members from that council, where's the budget allotted for these different projects and milestones? For example, you say that by 2030, all residential buildings must be net zero. So how can you set such a goal by 2030? How can we expect all residential buildings to be fully retrofitted to meet that goal? So in the banking sector, you may have heard of the NZBA. We may not be able to join the Glasgow Financial Alliance as a country, but I believe our banks can apply to join the NZBA. According to that alliance, basically by 2050, all banks must align their lending and investment portfolios with net zero emissions. So you can imagine asset managers, asset owners, insurance companies, and banks will all have to align themselves with this target. So I was really touched by Michael Bloomberg's speech. We have heard so much calls upon the public and the private sector to be sustainable and green. However, most of the time, we had no idea where to start. But now with the participation of the financial sector, we have begun to see some progress. Here's the framework. For example, today we are going to talk about how to set standards for net zero finance or financial systems. And we also have to use IPPC or SBTI to have more scientifically viable reduction targets. Do we have a trading marketplace? Do we have available data so that we can compare performances of different sectors, different companies? Moreover, asset managers are also expected to play a role. In other words, from Scope 1 to Scope 3, we can do something about reducing these emissions. So even though you may not emit carbon directly, but your suppliers downstream may have been a big emitter, that will be part of your Scope 3 emission. So here you can see the financial institutions' emissions may be little, But say if you finance a computer company, how does the computer company control its emissions, take stock of its emissions? You have to track their progress. For financial institutions, it may be more challenging for us to control Scope 3 emissions. You see, if you want to take stock of Scope 3 emissions, the cost may outweigh the benefits. Glasgow Financial Alliance actually has set up a hub or an office in Singapore and Japan. I believe that all economies in Asia will be impacted very soon. But there's some backlash so far because many banks or insurance companies have now been under some pressure. 5 major insurers, Swiss Re and AXA, have withdrawn from the alliance. So I think it is important that we keep monitoring what is going to happen with the backlash against ESG or net zero programs. And we can see that there has been some call in the Asia-Pacific region to finance the phased out of coal-fired power plants. And this actually, again, is launched by the GFANZ. It's now in a consultation stage. Take Taipower, for example. It's very challenging for Taipower to announce exactly when it's going to phase out coal-fired power plants. Last week, I was at a meeting at the Taipower, and I learned that Taipower has been running losses of 300 billion NTD. On the one hand, it has to ensure energy security and reducing carbon emissions. So it's really caught between a rock and a hot place. Taipower has been giving a lot of thought to the MPO, that is managed phase out. So maybe we can draw lessons from global alliances. For example, we can encourage Taipower to have MPO of their coal-fired power plants, especially if there is guarantee offered by the government. We have seen some examples, for example, the ADB's ETM or the Just Energy Transition Partnership programs in Indonesia and Vietnam. So I think this will work to everyone's benefits. There are a lot of details and specific steps. I will not go into detail here, but you can see the process is already in place. I would like to take this opportunity to remind Taiwan's Financial Supervisory Commission, it is important to have sound regulation, yet you also need to encourage market forces to play its role. Well, back to Taiwan. Here you can see I was in the picture, and our Minister of Economic Affairs was at the center in the photo. Last week, we visited an offshore wind farm. I was really amazed by the size of the turbine and the strong wind. However, this particular wind turbine would cost about $200 million US dollars, and for every 2 megawatt turbine, it's going to cost 1.8 billion NTD. So it's very expensive. U.S. dollars, correction. So it seems that local banking groups has financed the offshore wind power projects exceeding 400 billion NTD. Some banks have approached their sectoral credit concentration limit. However, according to our Phase 3 project, in the future, in the next 10 years, we're going to need additional 2 trillion NTD investment. Some foreign offshore wind power developers have expressed their intention to drop out of Taiwan's offshore wind projects. This is definitely a warning we have to take heed of. The third part of my presentation will focus on climate technology. The U.S., of course, is a leader through the Inflation Reduction Act. About $370 billion will be devoted to developing climate technology. Well, again, climate technology takes a long time to research and develop. Their business models are also quite unique. That is why their financing profile is quite unique. If we look at the state of climate tech, in fact, many of the friends from the investment sector tell me that, well, on climate technology, it's all about investing in renewable energy, isn't it? No, it is not the same. There are different components. For example, water resources, food system. The amount of investment in climate technology is about $82 billion. The U.S. is still the biggest market, taking up $44 billion. The second one, biggest market is Europe. Asia is lagging behind. However, Japan and Thailand have attracted a lot of foreign investment in developing climate technology. Well, however, funding in sustainable food and agriculture has decreased. However, some alternative meat producers like Beyond Meat have attracted a lot of investment. Carbon accounting is another sector full of strong momentum. Overall, you can see that the climate tech funding is still relatively new and scarce in Taiwan. There are many startups that are interested in this sector. However, there's not much financing available. You can see energy still takes up the lion's share. Transport comes second. I'm sure this climate tech startups would love to receive more support from members of SITCA. In Taiwan, when we talk about climate tech, I think most people are not sure what exactly they refer to. In Taiwan, the government has launched specific policies, strategies. Over 70 billion NTD will be allotted to support these strategies. I am one of the advisors to the government. However, I often admonish them that they don't seem to have attracted the industrial sector's support. We know that the World Economic Forum very often place the cost of living crisis and climate change as among the top global risks. In the long term, you can imagine climate change can have huge catastrophic impact. There's no denying that natural disasters are happening more frequently, and the damage caused is also more significant. This, of course, will make a huge impact on insurance sector. Here you can see, according to some estimations, metropolitan cities are at very high risk. I remember one company comes to me asking me to provide some scientific evidence so that he can convince his insurer that he can have reduced premium for the next 5 years. So later, I realized that the insurance company is under a lot of pressure because the potential losses from their policies have been on the rise because of the frequent natural disasters.
This is the MSCI report. The risk assessment is not very much incomplete. This is the impact of 1.5 degrees rise, and the red line is 5 degrees rise. It's not, well, 5 degrees is no longer a scenario. If we do not act very soon, maybe in the future, the world the temperature could possibly increase up to 5 degrees. So, how do we deal with the damages? Climate change is destabilizing insurance industry because when the insurance assess the policy or the premium, they base on traditional data they have, but old data may not be useful in the future in estimating climate change damages. So how do you estimate the impact of climate change? This is a new topic. We don't have data. We don't really know how to do that. How, not to mention how to predict what's going to happen in the next 2 or 3 decades. Now, sustainable development, sustainable operation is a vital aspect for companies to move into. We have many companies of the alliance very eager to know how can they deal with this. Many companies wants to invest big in moving towards that direction. They don't really know how much they have to put into this. They are required by their investors or their upstream partners to disclose their ESG performance, but they don't really know how to do it. And many Taiwanese companies are suppliers to multinational companies. They are under the pressure from their buyers to do so. For example, the European regulation is less damaging to Taiwan, but U.S. regulation is very strict. Now, the alliance started with TSMC and Delta. 2 years ago, they started their goal. About 2 years ago, TSMC was the first one. Everybody else followed TSMC. And later, in about a year or so, many companies announced the goal of 100% renewable energy. So many of these companies established a position of Chief Sustainable Development Officer. For example, Ms. He Laura was the Chief Sustainable Development Officer of TSMC, and many other companies they put very good people in these positions. So this is the organization chart of our alliance. 60% of our members have done their disclosure. They have counted carbon inventory. Many of the companies started very early, and a lot of our members are catching up very fast. In June, we will release new reports. 70% of my companies are public traded, so they are moving very fast in there. How do you deal with carbon of climate change? There are two different ways. You mitigate or you transform. Transition risk, there's a transition risk. There's also a physical risk. So how do they position themselves? How do they set their priorities? It's different from company to company. For example, TSMC, they have two committees. One is the ESG Guiding Committee. The other one is Risk Management Guiding Committee. So they have two different groups of people, one working on ESG, the other one working on risk management, and they combine the two in their report. So the first thing they have to do is to identify opportunity, risk, and a transition risk, and also physical risk. They want to maintain their competitiveness by releasing the report. And they also evaluate the possibility of damage from flood, from drought, and other natural catastrophes. So I think this is the first step. Everybody can begin. Cool. So don't begin with the difficult part. You can roughly estimate based on traditional records, past records, and sort of roughly estimate how much damage will be caused by certain events. And then eventually, this in TCFC report, this is one of the most important charts on the upper right-hand corner, opportunity on the right, risk on the left. For example, for TCMC, they announced they want to reach 100% renewable energy. So compared to Samsung, its competitor, it leads in 15 to 20% outperformance in terms of developing low-carbon products and services. What about acute weather catastrophe? There is a 1% possibility that this might occur. TSMC has their own team to produce this, but starting this year, they are now commissioning this project to a third party. And in the report, every item listed on this chart has a very long paragraph or a very long section of explanations and descriptions. And this is the impact of net zero target on the financial performance. For example, the number proposed by TSMC is about 2%. And this is the scenario analysis of different levels of temperature rise. We can calculate the possibility of worst case, 4.5 to 5.7 degrees or 8.5 degrees. This is our goal so far here, 1.9 degrees. We may not get the best estimate. Maybe best estimate. It is our estimate that for the midterm, the rise for SSP2 is between 2041 and 2060 is 2 degrees, and 2081 to 2100 is 2.7 degrees. So you have different scenarios to work on. So this is the impact on your supply chain, and what do you deal with it? I cannot show you this slide, but I will show you on the screen, okay? You have to analyze the location of your facilities. For example, your investment target has 100 factories. You have to look in into the geological information and location information of these 100 factories and put them into database. Well, some positions, some locations are vulnerable to heat and some are not. You have to know that. You have to define risk and then come up with a matrix. And then you have to come up with the critical physical risk analysis. And then these are different types of catastrophes and impacts. For example, supply chain A, B, C, best scenario, worst scenario, flooding, drought, heat, debris flow, or landslide, or wind, or sea level rise. You have different scenarios and different catastrophes. You have different estimations. And you can come up with possible loss. And please wait until the end of June. Many of our members will publish such reports. And then this is the physical risks. And they have to indicate the risks of every location of their factories. And then they want to explain in detail for every scenario what the impact will be. For example, if a company has a factory near the desert area and they have to disclose how the climate change will impact the operation of the factory that is near a desert area. For example, if the temperature rises by 5 degrees or by 2 degrees in the next 5 years, what can they do? Okay, another one. You have to come up with the results of your analysis. For example, between now and 2050, what do you do? This is TCFD report. This is a very complete TCFD report. For example, you have to be able to tell your investors what is going to happen to me, what would the impact be if I am affected by a typhoon or a flood. IFRS report. These are guidelines used by everybody. By the end of June, they will publish a new TCFD guidelines, a set of guidelines. So after they release the new guidelines, we can look into that and we can talk about that later. And also, this is another one. This is called TNFD. So many different guidelines, so many different reports. A few companies in Taiwan are using them. Easun Bank Easun Financial Holding is using TNFD. They want to talk about how they interact with the climate or the environment and the environment. In the disclosure of ESG, there is a first mover advantage because if you announce your reports early, you get public attention, you get investors' attention. For our Taiwan Climate Partnership, these are our priorities: innovation, climate technology, carbon market, carbon reduction, ESG, TCFD. We are a facilitator. Maybe I would like to urge Chairman Liu to organize a meeting to talk to us. This is the Japanese program. They have a 2050 carbon neutral strategy. This is from two years ago. A big chunk of it is the transformation of a financial sector. I think the FSC should encourage financial industry to make more profit from financing sustainable development. Well, the program is to attract ESG funds from around the world to Japan. So they identify 14 areas. Now the new version has 20 areas. So companies, private sector and the government all are putting resources to make opportunities and to reach the goal of net zero. But Taiwan, we're adopting a restriction or a policy control measure. This is very different from Japan. So finally,
I believe on climate change, we must manage carbon assets. It's really about the management of carbon assets. There should be sticks as well as carrots. And of course, you can always work closely with Taiwan's tech sector. We, of course, are opposed to greenwashing. Planting trees is definitely not enough. In fact, some commentators have been saying that, well, now we have this carbon trading platform. Maybe you can have a zero carbon building and you plant some trees on one of the balconies in this building. You can earn some carbon credits. So in the future, carbon credits are going to be ubiquitous everywhere. You may think it's a joke, but I remember going to one of the Southeast Asian countries, and their environmental minister told me that basically they now have carbon trading in place. They have an application which links individuals planting tree in home in a bonsai with their contribution to carbon reduction. And that is kind of trading mechanism as well. I told that minister, no, that's not carbon trading at all. And later he invited me to give a formal lecture for his colleagues. So it seems that there are still a lot of misconceptions about carbon trading. I think in the future, the management of carbon assets will be very closely tied to what you do in your sector. That concludes my presentation. Thank you for your attention.